Please continue standing for a reading from the Gospel of Luke. At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me. Listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day, I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you. And I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Let me go ahead and answer the question that's on everyone's mind today. Does the preacher know what time it is? And the answer is yes. Let me take just a few moments to talk with you about courage this morning. Someone has suggested there are two types of courage. There's one kind that is situational and it's immediate. You are walking down the street in your neighborhood, you see that there is a house that's on fire. You hear a voice from inside calling for help. You muster all of your courage and you run in and you rescue the person who is there. It's not really a spur of the moment thing. It's the character that comes out in you. It's how you have been raised. It's how you live your life. And in the moment, you sense the opportunity and you summon your courage and you respond. The second kind of courage is a little bit different. It is the kind that you anticipate something that is challenging and daunting and difficult to do in your life, and yet you are still willing to do it. It's still a part of your character. Your experiences in life have led you up to this, and you are unwilling to take the easy way. You're going to do what is hard and difficult. It might be an addiction. You finally own up to it. You finally acknowledge it. You finally confess it. And you say, "I need to get some help with this." You know it's going to cost you something. It's going to be difficult to do. It's going to be a lifelong battle, but you're willing to do it. That is courage. And it's that kind of courage that I want to spend just a few minutes talking about this morning. The courage to do difficult things, the courage to do hard things. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. He was nearing the city when some Pharisees came out and told him, "King Herod has it in for you. King Herod wants to have your life. Make a run for it, Jesus." And Jesus responds, "You go tell that fox that I am undeterred in my mission." Now, there are just three quick things I want to say about this passage as it relates to courage. The first is found in Jesus calling King Herod a fox. I'll be honest with you, as I'm reading the passage, the first thing that comes to my mind is the children's story, The Gingerbread Man. You know the story. The gingerbread man is in the pan, he's in the oven, and the oven door is open to check to see if he's ready yet. And he jumps out and he runs out of the house and across the countryside, and he can't be caught by anybody. And he laughs and sings, "Run, run, run, fast you can. Can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man." And finally he comes to the river, and a sly fox greets him and says, "Hop on my back and I'll give you a ride across the river." The gingerbread man realizes he has no place to go, nowhere else to run, so he hops on the fox's back. And as the waters rise, he moves to the fox's neck, then the top of his head, and finally out over the snout of his nose. And the fox just flips him up in the air and gobbles him down. And the moral of the story is beware of the sly fox. He'll gobble you up. That's the moral of Luke's story as well. King Herod is a sly fox, and he intends to gobble Jesus up. The threat is real, and Jesus has to have courage. The second thing that I want to point out is that not only is the threat real, but Jesus is undaunted. Jesus continues on his journey to Jerusalem. Jesus has set his face for the cross, and he is heading there, and nothing is going to stop him. And this is where I want to put the accent mark in this message. This Lent season, our church is participating in a racial reconciliation initiative with our brothers and sisters from Cascade United Methodist Church. Cascade is a church very similar to Peachtree Road in every way, except most of its members are black, whereas most of our members are white. And we're getting together in an initiative that's pretty simple. Every Saturday morning, we get together for an hour and a half, and the first half hour is fellowship and worship, and we hear a lecture. And then the next hour, we break out into small groups, and we talk about racial reconciliation with each other. Half the people in the small group from Peachtree Road, the other half from Cascade. And last week, as we were getting together for the first one, I realized this whole thing could fall apart. Because I realized that we white people tend to say things that are insensitive and hurtful to people who are black. We do it unintentionally. We do it out of ignorance. And when African American people hear something that is insensitive, something that is hurtful and harmful, they tend to respond with anger. And I caught a glimpse of that, a possibility of that. And at the intersection of ignorance and anger can be a volatile place. People, when they hear an insensitive remark and they respond with anger, generally there is a self-preservation mode that says, get out of here. And I saw it, and I wondered if our initiative might fall apart because of this intersection of ignorance and anger. But the problem is, if we walk away from the table, if we do that, and that's probably our first inclination to conflict, if we walk away from the table, we miss the opportunity to be educated in what we said that was wrong or what that we did that was hurtful. And the other person misses out on the opportunity to deal with their anger and to come to some understanding of the other. And if we could apply to this situation compassion and empathy, we can move beyond the conflict and create authentic community. And that's what we're after in this initiative. But I realize the danger of it. I realize what conflict can do to us. And it's important to stay at the table and to work through the conflict, to be courageous enough to take the other person's anger, to be courageous enough to let the other person say the insensitive thing and then talk with them about it, why it is insensitive. And that brings me to the third point I wanted to make in this passage. And that is that courage, when we are willing to stay true to our mission, it leads to a payoff of reconciliation. And when you think about it, that is why Jesus came in the first place, to reconcile us to God and to each other. I think about that Last Supper that Jesus had with his disciples. Just imagine in your mind who is at the table. The 12 disciples with Jesus. And I don't want it to be lost on you that one of the persons at the table was a zealot. He was a part of a party that was intent on throwing the Romans out of Israel. That was their mission in life, to rid Israel of the Romans. And there was at the table a tax collector, someone who by definition was collaborating with the Romans. You could not find two people who were more polar opposites than this zealot and this tax collector. And yet they were both at Jesus' table. And at that table, Jesus treated all of the persons as a hen would her little chicks, Luke says. A protective hen gathering them together. And it's at that table that he took bread. And when he blessed God, he broke the bread and he gave it to them. He gave it to the zealot and he gave it to the tax collector and said, "Take, eat. This is my body which is given for you." And then he took the cup. And when he'd given thanks to God, he gave it to them and he said, "Drink from this, zealot. Drink from this, tax collector. This is my blood of the new covenant poured out for you for the forgiveness of sins." Jesus is inviting people to the table, to stay at that table and to find reconciliation with each other, to be courageous enough to live through the conflict because the payoff is reconciliation. It is true community where we are one with God, one with each other, and one in ministry to all the world. That's why we're here. That's why the church exists. Wherever I go these days, I see anger and ignorance. I see it on the news. I especially see it on social media. I even see it in the church. And when I read a comment that someone made and I say, "Why did you say that? Don't you know that's hurtful? Don't you know that's harmful? Don't you know that that hurts your relationship with that person?" But we seem to be emboldened on social media to say whatever pops in our minds with no filter whatsoever. And then I see the response that comes in anger. And I worry about the opportunity for there to be community, authentic community. What I'm grateful for is the graciousness of the people of Cascade as we have met these last 2 weeks. For they have shared with us some things that we say and do probably out of ignorance that are hurtful and harmful, and they have been a wonderful guide to us. And as we have been able to respond back, I didn't know. I didn't understand. It would never be my intent to hurt you. They have heard it. They have understood it. They have empathized with it. And we have moved beyond the conflict so far. We have moved beyond the conflict to find community with each other. That's the goal. And if we can learn to do that with each other in race, we can learn to do that with each other in many other ways in life as well. And so this Lenten season comes along at a very opportune time for us. For Lent is a time to pull back, to be still, to be quiet, to pray, to fast, to listen to the Holy Spirit in our lives. It's also a time to give things up, like judging other people and letting go of our anger and confessing our ignorance and growing into the persons that God has called us to be, the persons that Jesus taught us to pray to be. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so this morning, I encourage you to be people of courage. I invite you to be courageous enough to look for the opportunities to be in relationship with others, authentic relationship that brings peace. Not the kind of peace that is absence of conflict, but a peace that is the characteristic of authentic community with one another. I'm ready to lead in that direction. I hope you're ready to live in that direction. Amen.